Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be learning all about the greatest lifting program in existence, proven, stood the test of time from the bowels of Texas, Wichita Falls in the United States of America, the Starting Strength Novice Linear Progression. Hey guys, Coach Michael here at Starting Strength Boston. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the Novice Linear Progression, or NLP. The NLP takes advantage of the novice effect, right in the name of the program, a little bit on the nose. And you can see that displayed right here on the cover of this book, the gray book, Practical Programming for Strength Training, 3rd edition. We got this little graphy graph here, hashtag Nickelback. Look at this graph. On this graph, we have 3 variables: the rate of adaptation, strength performance, and training complexity. So when you start out as a novice, the rate of adaptation is high, meaning that you're going to make a lot of progress very quickly, specifically every 48 hours if you're doing a strength training program. Your strength performance is going to rapidly increase, the newbie gains that you may have heard of. And the training complexity is low, meaning we're going to do the same thing over and over, and it's just going to keep on working. So the idea with the NLP is that we're taking advantage of this novice effect so that we can get as strong as possible, as quickly as possible. You see it work all the time. People, they do 3 sets of 5, and they do their Mark Ripito impression, so they're like, oh, do your 3 sets of 5 and add 5 pounds each time. Why would you do anything different? Yeah, 5. Sick, dude, great. Like a regular Karl Marx there, that old comedian. So you see people, they run this NLP, they do their 3 sets of 5, they add 5 pounds 3 times a week, and they do it for like 3 years, and they're squatting like 1,900 pounds by the end of it. Works great, works like a charm. And the type of strength that we're trying to accumulate through this process is general strength. And I'm not talking about that weird car insurance commercial. I'm talking raw strength that is applicable to sports, to life in general. So not only are we proponents of strength, there's also a philosophical component. So if we're going to get brutally strong and get our squats up to 2,100 pounds, we got to consider a couple things. The first of which is the SAID principle, which stands for Specific Adaptation to Imposed Demand, which is the same thing as specificity. So if we're going to get generally strong, we need to use movements that are best suited to getting us generally strong, and there are a few criteria that we look for, which brings us to our exercise selection criteria. Also, by the way, you could totally just read the book, Practical Programming, but nobody wants to do that, so I'm sitting here making these silly videos, wasting my time. Just read the book. Read the book and do the program. What is so difficult about that? It's also the principle of stress recovery adaptation, or just SRA for short, which simply put is just how often you can add weight to the bar. So as a novice, you're going to do that 3 times a week, every 48 hours. And then as you get more advanced, that area, that length of time stretches out. So like I said, SAID principle, we're trying to get generally strong, so these movements need to facilitate that goal of getting generally strong. So the 3 exercise selection criteria are, number 1, we're going to use the most amount of muscle mass. You can't get a muscle strong if you don't train it. So by using movements that allow us to use the most amount of muscle, we're going to get all of these muscles strong, like a lovely symphony of getting jacked. Criteria number 2, we're going to use the longest effective range of motion. Kind of like I was saying with the muscles, you can't strengthen a range of motion that you don't train. So like if you're an athlete, you've heard Rip talk about this all the time. If you're a lineman and you're always in like a quarter squat position, like you're in hide and seek position ready to scare somebody, you want to strengthen your full depth squat, not just your quarter squat, because you might not always be in that quarter squat position. You might have to go deeper every now and then, you know, and that's a big problem for us guys, let me tell you. But nonetheless, even if you were just quarter squatting, your full depth squat is going to drive up your quarter squat anyways. So it just makes more sense to strengthen the longest effective range of motion. And if you want clarification on what a longer effective range of motion is, go check out one of the other starting strength videos on that topic, or one of the articles. And the 3rd and final criteria, completing the trilogy, like the Lord of the Rings, we want to use movements that allow us to lift the most amount of weight. Because if we define strength as the ability to produce force against an external resistance, then you're going to produce the most amount of force against an external resistance if that external resistance is the most resistant. Simply put, you are objectively producing more force against a heavier weight. So if you use the heaviest amount of weight possible, you're producing the most amount of force, you are the most strong. You're displaying the most amount of strength. So that's the novice linear progression in a nutshell. It has a lot of utility, as it turns out. So number one, the most obvious reason, if you're a brand new lifter, you can take advantage of the novice effect, run this program, and get pretty strong pretty quickly. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you have to take a layoff from the gym, let's say you took like a long vacation, like a month or more, you got sick, or like someone in your family died or something like that, like something really traumatic and terrible, you can reset and you can use this. It's not going to last as long the second time because you're going to be closer to your peak strength. It can be used for like power lifters too, coming off of a meet. Let's say you take some time off and you just like let your body chill for a bit. You can get back towards your peak strength by running a very short LP. And then my personal favorite use, if you fuck up your program, like let's say you run your press up and then you switch to the Texas method for press. So you're doing like a light day and like you're doing 1 set of 5 on the intensity day, and then you regress and then you have no idea where your actual press strength is at this point. It's been a few weeks. Then you can just run a quick LP again, get you right back up to where you were, and then you can kind of choose a more intelligent program from that point. So the last thing I'm going to talk about in this video is the big picture. I'm talking the Sistine Chapel, and this is going to transition into part 2, is that the NLP in the grand scheme of your training is not a significant chunk of your overall training. So if you're going to do this for like 10 years, right, and your NLP lasts 6 months, which is a long time for a lot of people, then that's like 5% or less of your total training time. So like don't stress out about making tons of gains on the NLP. You're going to make a ton of gains no matter what you do, but don't stress out if like if you get attached to like a certain number, you don't wind up there, right? Speaking of that, treat each lift as its own thing when you're doing the NLP. It's not just like this one sort of monolith of a program. Ha, monolith. That was unintentional. But yeah, you can treat each lift as its own sort of thing. So like your press might stall out and you have to change it before your squat, for example. So keep that in mind as you're doing this. Don't just change everything all at once. That's also, I'm going to touch on that in part 2, so I'll save that for then. That's the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you got questions or comments, leave them down below. All right, that's it. Have a great day, pal.